on, the formalities must be proceeded with. We've been joined by a regular guest on this Eman channel, Fadilat Shaykh Ustad Khidir Hussain. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
First of all, welcome to the show, and thank you very much for coming so late at night.
Barakallahu fi.
Now, before we move on to our main Q&A, the questions before we take on air, I just wanted to discuss an important subject, which is we've seen in the last couple of days results for GCSE and A-levels have come out. Alhamdulillah, Muslims as a whole, mashallah, we can see a lot of news medias, a lot of local newspapers have reported that their schools are performing very well. Mashallah, Muslims are now getting into Oxbridge, including the Russell Group universities. Now, I'd like to take your message first. What would your message be to those students, especially to the parents who are watching this show? What would your message be in brief?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walahu wattaba'a hudahu amma ba'd. Dearest brothers and sisters, first and foremost, we congratulate our young brothers and sisters, and it's that time of the year when we should congratulate our young brothers and sisters who have shown dedication and commitment and diligence throughout the year, and they sat their exams and they received their results, amazing results at this particular time. So we congratulate the brothers and sisters who worked really hard throughout the year and those who attained good results through their commitment and dedication. One thing I want to mention, brothers and sisters, we should celebrate and we should thank and show appreciation to our children and acknowledge their achievements. But at the same time, as parents, we need to show appreciation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has given us the tawfiq to nurture our children and to ensure that we are giving them guidance, we are giving them support, we are ensuring that we are putting them on the right track. Allah has given us the tawfiq. So it is also the commitment and dedication of the parents which has enabled our young boys and girls to attain such a good result. Moving forward as an ummah living in this society, in this plural society, one of the most developed countries in the world rather, we as Muslims need to be shining stars. Our young brothers and sisters growing up in this society, dear parents, we need to ensure that they are people of progression and development, and they will only achieve these statuses if we ensure that we are working behind them, we are supporting them, we are putting them on the right track, we are nurturing them accordingly and appropriately. And we can see some amazing results this year. Some of the results that we have seen, mashallah, it is unbelievable that our children have so much positivity, so much commitment and so much intelligence amongst them, and we need to nurture that. We need to ensure we acknowledge that and we aid them and assist them in moving forward bi-idhnillahi ta'ala.
And now, another important factor, alhamdulillah, those who have done good, congratulations to the parents and to the students themselves who worked very hard, including the institution that have put a lot of effort as well. Now, the other side of it, perhaps a lot of students may have not achieved the result that they would have wanted, or the parents' aspiration or the parents' desire or dreams might not have been fulfilled as what they have perceived. What would your message be to them?
I think firstly we need to understand that failure is not always a failure. Sometimes this failure could be the beginning of a new journey. So as a parent, I would want my child to achieve. I would want my child to develop, progress and attaining amazing results. Any parent would want that for their child. So naturally what happens is a parent does become perturbed because you've put so much effort, you've exhausted all your energy financially, physically, so that your son or your daughter can achieve. And when they don't achieve, naturally what happens is we become quite perturbed and we can become quite stressed as well.
And disappointed.
Yes. But we have to understand that not always failure is the end, but rather it could be the opening or the beginning of a new journey or a beautiful journey.
Now, even though you've mentioned failure, however, for an instance, we have seen on occasion, I'm sure as an imam, you may have come across a lot of instances or examples that a student, instead of getting A star, might have got an A, or instead of maybe have got a B, C or so on, and maybe not have failed but not achieved the result that they wanted to get in. Does it mean, is that all? That's the end? Because some parents we have seen, unfortunately, their hopes are so high that when their children do not get what they wanted them to get, or perhaps even the child may have put enough effort to achieve the best result they can. However, during the exam time, we know anything can happen. Stress, pressure can make them lose the focus. Now, some parents have got the understanding if you do not perform good result, that's it. You can't be successful in life. Is that true?
That's definitely not the case. There are people who didn't progress in terms of education, but if you read their life and if you look at their contribution and achievements, it's absolutely astonishing that without education, proper education, these people have succeeded in life. So for us to say that, okay, my son didn't achieve an A star where
Or a
my
daughter.
neighbors or my relatives, daughter or son, they achieved such good results, that comparison is not a good comparison. The reason is comparison is the thief of all joy. Naturally, what we do is we're constantly comparing our children to other people's children. We have to understand they're two different individuals. They will perform differently and they will achieve different things in life. If my son or daughter achieves an A, someone else achieves an A star, or they achieve a B, as long as I know that the results they got, they are able to go onto higher education, they are able to do things and succeed in life, then I should be happy. It doesn't always have to be that they get the best marks possible. Yes, as a parent, this is what we want for our children. Any parent would want that my son or my daughter achieves the highest of marks because that brings tranquility, satisfaction to the heart. But at the same time, we have to understand that not all of our children will be able to perform. There will be children who are brighter. So let us not be disappointed in that sense. And at the same time, remember, this is the qadr of Allah. This is the decision of Allah. You have tried, your children have tried, they weren't able to
Put the
achieve.
efforts.
So we leave the rest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Now, the other thing as well, perhaps this is not too much within our community as a Muslim community. We have an understanding it's education, 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 i.e., primary education, secondary education, and university. Now, there's a discussion in the mainstream media or in the newspapers we see university is not for everyone, or perhaps everyone might not prosper academically. Some may be good in vocational courses, hands-on practical aspects such as could be plumbing, could be electrician, so on and so forth. How do we get to make people understand, or we understand ourselves, that if our child is not good enough to achieve good result to get into a good university or study a subject that parents or they themselves aspire to study, there are other routes available? Why don't we explore those? What would you say?
If the child is reluctant to study, we have to understand this very important point. If they're reluctant to study and they don't want to study a particular subject, I don't think it's fair for a mother or a father to pressure that child and take that particular route. I think the freedom should be given to that child. As you mentioned rightfully, there are other routes out there where a young man or a young woman, they can achieve and they can develop, because we've seen many cases where people haven't studied, but they've worked their way up to the point that a person who's done their masters come out of university and it seems like they're not able to attain such a role or position as in comparison to the person who may not have gone to university yet they've done well for themselves. So I think going to university is important. I think we need a generation, educated generation, and I think we need to encourage it, but at the same time, this is not the only route to succeed. There are other routes out there where we can do experience, we can perhaps do training while we are working. As a young man, or a young woman, I might not be very committed when it comes to education, but I enjoy working. So let me think about that. As a parent, I think we should sit with them, have a good conversation, give them some independence to think and make decisions. Of course, we as parents have the overall authority because we are looking after them. But at the same time, having that good conversation with them, consultation with them, will be the way forward, inshallah.
Now, some student may be very reluctant and they may be intelligent enough, but as normally we do see children tend to not get into education. They may be having too much closeness to their sports or other activities, but the parents or the school know that child has got the potential to go into university. Now, we're not saying we should force our children, but however, since you've mentioned coming to a discussion, what about encouraging them to attain what they are good at, what they're best at? Can we not encourage?
Absolutely, and I think every parent does that. As I said previously, every parent wants good for their child, and every parent would go to any length to ensure their son or daughter achieves. However, A parent shouldn't pressure their child so much so that this child becomes stressed, because we've seen many cases where the child, and some communities we are aware of, where there is this idea or belief that I want my son or daughter to become a doctor or a nurse, but they might not want to study that discipline, and that has a huge impact on the child.
Inshallah, we'll come back to the discussion more in details, but after a short break. Do stay tuned with us. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back after the short break. You're watching Ask Eman late night show in conversation with Shaykh and Ustad Khidir Hussain. If you'd like to call in or text us or email us or even drop us a message on social media platform, then please feel free to use the detail that are appearing at the bottom of your TV screen. This is the time when no subject or topic is off the limit. So please feel free to message us or even text us, and the WhatsApp number, if you want to send us a WhatsApp text messages, then please feel free to again use the detail that is appearing at the bottom of your TV screen. Now, Sheikh, before I take questions on air, there's another important subject I'd like to discuss, especially as parents, and it's a late night show. Whose responsibility it is as Muslim to teach sex education to our children?
I think sex education begins at home. As parents, we have a huge responsibility over our children. And when it comes to their education and progression, often we exhaust all of our energy when it comes to giving them the right education. But often we shy away from the subject sex education at home. And the reason is we as Muslims, alhamdulillah, as a community, as an ummah, we have high etiquettes, manners, we respect, we have adab, we have all of those important ingredients within our lives. And for that very reason, we don't have those conversations often with our young daughter or our young son. As they are growing up, they are starting to see physical change. They are starting to see all sorts of changes happening. And if we are not giving them guidance, if we are not educating them, if we are not teaching them about all of those changes that they are experiencing, then they will find that information somewhere else. And that information that is given to them, it might be correct, it might be incorrect. And the society that we are living in, there is so much information out there. There is that which is correct and there is that which is incorrect. Our children are exposed to that.
Just to clarify, when you say correct and incorrect, you mean in context of Islamic understanding?
Absolutely,
and
that
education?
which goes against the very principles of our religion. So in order for us to ensure that we are giving them the correct understanding of sex education, because it is an important discipline, it is important for a young man, young woman growing up that they are taught and they are aware of this particular issue. So this starts at home.
And now other cultures, they do discuss, but especially in Muslim homes, it's something that we even cannot discuss it with our parents, with our older brothers or sisters. It's something that maybe it's very frowned upon. So during Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, did Sahaba shy away from asking those questions?
I think, as I mentioned, because our religion, we are taught immensely about maintaining good adab, etiquettes. I'm not speaking about all of these things to your father, mother, brother. You don't have those discussions. But I think it's that time where we actually sit down with our children and we have those discussions. A mother should sit down with her daughter, and that change that is happening as she is growing up, she is starting to see these physical changes as well as experience her menses, the bleeding and all of those changes that are happening at a particular age. A mother has a responsibility to sit down with her children and have that conversation, like a man has a responsibility, a father, to say to his son, these are the changes that you are expecting or you are seeing, and this is normal and these things will happen. You raised a very important point. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not only was he a messenger, but also he was a doctor for the people. And if you study his life and if you look at the traditions, you will come to know many people would come to him with these questions. Not only the females, but as well as the males, the young children, when it comes to the physical change, when it came to the bleeding, all of those important parts, or you could say related to our religion, which today we could call in an institution sex education. We refer to this topic discipline as sex education. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he dealt with this during his time, so it is not a new phenomenon. Rather, it is something that was seen.
It's an existing phenomenon.
Absolutely,
but it's just something due to the barrier in culture. Perhaps
Absolutely.
we have shied
and
away.
we have to eradicate that shyness and have that conversation with our children, because if we fail to do so, they will get the information from somewhere else.
And what would you say, just a supplementary question on that, what would you say how important it is for our parents to actively participate with the schools?
The parents have a huge responsibility when it comes to building relationship with the school. The school has a role to play and the parent has a role to play.
A lot of our parents don't attend parents' meetings.
Absolutely.
They don't know what the school is doing.
And often the reason is because there is a language barrier as well, so you have to appreciate that. So because of the language barrier, the parents shy away from attending these programs or events that is beneficial for them and their children.
But the flip side of it is maybe they've been too busy earning money as well.
So this is not commitment when it comes to the education of your children. When it comes to such an important issue such as sex education, it is absolutely paramount that we as parents attend all of those events to voice our opinion. Whether we agree or disagree, it is important physically we attend these seminars, programs, events regarding matters related to sex education. And if we are oblivious and if we are absent, then we have failed the community, the Muslim community, as well as failing our children.
Thank you very much for that. And I hope that answers your question. And if you do have any questions along those subjects, then do please feel free to call in or drop us a text message using the details at the bottom of your TV screen. Now we'll be moving swiftly on to your questions, inshallah. Now let us start with the first question for tonight. If a couple does not get intimate on their first night, does that invalidate their nikah?
After the nikah has been established, consummated, so the nikah has been done, it is not mandatory that there is physical relationship after that. Rather, it is something that is encouraged. However, if a couple do not have physical relationship, mujama'a, physical relationship, then this does not invalidate the nikah in any way whatsoever.
Thank you very much for clarifying it. Now move on to the next question. The question is asking, I'm possessed by jinn and everything I think is negative about Allah from morning to evening. My head is busy. I feel it's like me saying that I'm uneasy and sometimes I cry alone.
The issue regarding the possession of jinn, I think first and foremost we need to establish whether it is actual possession of jinn or not. And it could be that you need other treatment either than thinking about being possessed by a jinn. Perhaps go and speak to your GP first, and it could be another issue. Maybe speak to your doctor first as well, your GP, just to see if there is another treatment. But if you've had a ruqya and the raqi, the person who performed the ruqya, qualified and established and well accepted in society, because there are those who are out there who are just making money from people who don't know the concept of ruqya. But if you've gone to someone who's reputable, who is established in the community, and they've for sure told you that yes, the signs and the symptoms tell us that yes, there is this sense or this feeling of possession, then of course in that case you continuously make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because this indeed is a test and trial from Allah. And shaitan wants you to believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not exist. Shaitan wants you to lose hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Shaitan wants to preoccupy your mind with irrelevant matters over relevant matters. And a person, when they go through this trial and tribulation, they come to the lowest point of their life, to the point that shaitan nearly takes them outside of the fold of Islam. Because of that difficulty and pain that they are enduring, they become hopeless. And Allah reminds us in the Quran, وَلَا تَيْأَسُوا مِنْ رَوْحِ اللَّهِ, do not lose hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This test and trial that you are enduring, it is actually removal of your sin. It is physical rejuvenation for you. It is purifying you. So think of this trial and tribulation as something that is positive. And while we are experiencing difficulty, while we are experiencing trial and tribulation, remaining positive, remaining optimistic during times of pessimism is an important quality for us. So this is the moment we need to fight shaitan. If I've gone and had a ruqya and the raqi has told me, yes, you have been possessed, then I need to ensure that I am firm upon establishing salah, making adhkar, making all of those important du'as. Before I go to sleep, I read قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ, and I read this 3 times and I blow it on my hand and I go and do this to my body 3 times. This was a practice done by the whole body, and Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he would do that and he would begin from the top of his head going down this way as much as he could reach his feet, and he would do that 3 times. When he became ill, our mother Aisha radiallahu anha, she would perform that on behalf of him. So this is a very important treatment that we should apply. But at the same time, I would recommend, please do go and speak to your GP. And it might not be possession. We often, what happens is I have these feelings and I myself think that it is possession of jinn, but it's not always the case. So speak to your GP. But if you, because we don't know of the case, but if you've already spoken to someone who does ruqya and they've said you've been possessed, then please continue with those treatments that we have mentioned. May Allah make it easy for you.
And just wanted to add a little bit, what about the concept of waswasa?
So this is indeed something that shaitan does, as we find in Surah قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ مَلِكِ النَّاسِ إِلَهِ مِنْ شَرِّ الْوَسْوَاسِ الْخَنَّاسِ. Indeed, shaitan, he places waswasa, these doubts within the hearts of the believers to drift them away from belief, to take them away from belief. How do you eradicate this waswasa? I ensure that I am making all of those invocations that have been taught to us by the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which has been taught by the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Jazakallah khair. Hope it answers your question. And if you do have any more questions in detail, then please do seek qualified advice, as Shaykh has mentioned, by qualified doctor, who may then can refer you to the relevant departments to perhaps analyze things more in detail. At the same time, after that, inshallah, you can look into it more details, and by having a one-to-one conversation with a qualified Shaykh, inshallah. Now, I wanted to make sure we move on to the next question. And before we move on to the next question, it's time for a short break, inshallah. And after the short break, we'll be discussing more in details, and we'll be continuing asking your question. Inshallah, do stay tuned with us. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back after the break. You're watching Ask Eman, the late night show where no subject is off the limit. In conversation with tonight's guest, Fadilat Shaykh Ustad Khidir Hussain. If you'd like to discuss anything, if you'd like to ask anything by calling or dropping us a text or email, or even sending us your message through our social media platform, then please feel free to use the details that are appearing at the bottom of your TV screen. Now, Shaykh, let's move on swiftly now to the questions. We've got another question. It's saying, what is the importance of Islamic will in Islam?
Every believer who has wealth must leave a will behind, and this is the instruction of our beloved Rasul Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that a believer is a person who does not let 3 days pass except that they have a will. There are numerous ahadith, traditions, statements of the Rasul, of our Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, encouraging leaving a will. And the person who doesn't leave a will leave their children in a very difficult situation. As a father or a mother, it is my responsibility to ensure that I leave a will behind for my children. Many of the Sahaba, Radwanullahi alayhim ajma'een, they would write their will and they would leave it under their pillow because there was no guarantee for tomorrow. There is no guarantee for tomorrow. For that very reason, having a will is absolutely fundamental. The Quran and the Hadith, if you open the two sacred sources, you will see great encouragement in regards to that. So, inshallah, let us make an effort. And the will itself is quite costly, so sometimes it can be challenging for people who might not have a lot of money to do the will itself. But there is a lot of information out there, a lot of firms out there who do Islamic wills. So please do get in touch with them, inshallah.
Just I'd like to pick on what you've just said. There are a lot of firms out there. Now, a lot of firms out there, they might not be specializing in Islamic will, and they may come a bit cheaper than actual firm that specializes in Islamic will. So then, should we not check and make sure that if they
No, absolutely. Just the way we would, before executing our zakah, any charity, we would ensure that it's a reputable organization. Likewise, when it comes to an organization that does Islamic will, even though it's a bit more on the expensive side, at least you know they will do the job for you properly.
Jazakallah khair. Now, the next question, perhaps it might be leading to the other question we discussed in the second segment, and it says, I want to find out how come the shaitan can whisper in salah. I thought if we read Allah's name, the shaitan can't come near us.
When we enter salah, takbiratul ihram, that is the pillar of our salah. Immediately after that, we read subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika wa tabarak asmuk. We glorify Allah. Immediately after that, we seek refuge in Allah by saying a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, ta'awudh. This statement is said as a protection. It is used as a protection. Shaitan will come to a person, especially in salah, and disturb them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the authorization to shaitan to do what he wills, and he will come from the front, from the side, from the bottom, as we find in the Quran mentioned, to perturb and disturb the believers. Especially in salah, you will find that you are disturbed more often. So in salah, you are in this struggle constantly. So this is why we make those important adhkar. We recite the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even then we find ourselves at war with shaitan when it comes to salah itself. And this is the struggle that is loved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Allah sees that one of his slaves in salah, they are trying their utmost to be devout in prayer, this is the most loved thing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is not in need of quantity, He is in need of quality. When a person is striving with commitment to maintain commitment in salah, khushu in salah, attentiveness in salah, this is what is loved by Allah. So when you are afflicted with this difficulty, it's a common case. This question was asked to the Messenger ﷺ, that if we become amongst the people that lose focus in salah, the shaitan disturbs us, what do we do? So Rasul ﷺ gave some remedies to the people. إِذَا قُمْتَ إِلَى صَلَاتِكَ فَصَلِّ صَلَاةَ مَوَدَّعٍ. He says in a narration, when you stand for salah, then consider this prayer to be your last prayer. And he gave other remedies so that people would be more focused in salah.
Jazakallah khair. The next question is, I know that drawing human and animal is haram, but how about representing human beings with, say, clouds in a cartoon, no lips or eyes, or any other stuff, just chat boxes? What should I do?
That is absolutely fine. The prohibition that we find in the hadith clearly, that the people will who depict pictures of that which does not exist, and they bring that to existence through their picture, that is which the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam has prohibited. But when it comes to just the shape itself, without eyes and the nose and the hands and the limbs, so on and so forth, that a person would see this image and they would consider that to be non-human, non-existent, non-creation, then that is absolutely fine. So what you said in regards to clouds, or even when it comes to nature itself, drawing trees and beautiful nature itself, there is no harm with that. Wallahu a'lam.
Jazakallah khair. Then we move on. Next is, are condoms forbidden in Islam?
When it comes to the usage of protection, and this is from a Shari'i perspective, it is permissible. if a person, even though some of the ulama they consider it to be disliked, but if a person is considering not having children, and in that case is absolutely fine, and there is no issue with that. Wallahu ta'ala alam.
Just to clarify here, there is something called as temporary protection and there is called as permanent protection. When I say permanent protection, that means it's irreversible. Now, is irreversible methods allowed in Islam?
No, if it's
If there is
permanent,
no medical
if
complication.
it's permanent, then it's not permissible. If it's tahdid al-nasl, the fuqaha they use the term tahdid al-nasl to prevent the woman from becoming pregnant. So the man would use protection
Or
for
even
a
the female
temporary
can use the
period.
protection.
For a temporary period. Or there is another term that is used that when they are having physical relationship, before the man releases the water, he takes his private part out, so the water doesn't go in, the sperm itself doesn't go in. That is permissible. It was practiced amongst the Sahaba, so on and so forth. Even though the scholars, they consider it to be makruh, disliked. Why? Al-izzatu ma'al kathir, as Rasulullah he says that this ummah, that the more we grow in numbers, it is better for our ummah. However, Imam Ghazali, he brings a very important point in his Ihya. He says that if you have many children, but you're not able to give them the correct tarbiyah, upbringing, nurture them accordingly, you're better off having only one or two that are good contributors to our religion, upright individual, as opposed to having 5 or 6 children who are not benefit to this society. So having these preventive measures, it is permissible on a temporary basis, but not on a permanent basis.
Okay, but on a permanent basis, if there is a medical need or if there is a medical decision by the doctor, that's a different subject. Yeah. Okay, Jazakallah khair for clarifying it. Now we'll move on to a caller, inshallah, and see who's on the line. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Please ask a question. What's your question?
Shaykh, I'd like to ask this Shaykh who's with you, what is the correct position of praying on a chair? I hear so many different things and I don't know which one to follow.
Okay.
Can you explain to me? Thank you very much.
Jazakallah khairan. Very relevant question, and that's what we see. And thank you very much for asking such an important question. What's the correct procedure?
My dear sister, first and foremost, Jazakillahu khair for this very important question, and I'm sure many people will benefit from this question, inshallah. When it comes to sitting on a chair and praying, if the person is able to stand and sit on the ground properly, and they sit on a chair while they have the ability, their prayer is not valid. Rather, their prayer will become fasid, invalid. If a person is ma'dhur, a person who is weak or incapable, they are not physically able to sit down, in that case the ulama consider it to be mubah. And I give you an example. Someone's had a back operation, a nerve operation, and a knee operation. In that case, it is absolutely fine and there is no issue with that. Even though the closer guidance and closer to the sunnah is that if a person cannot stand, then they actually sit down on the floor. Normally we don't put our feet towards the qibla because it is khilaf adab, it goes against the correct teachings of the Messenger ﷺ. But in that situation, Rasulullah ﷺ, he tells us that if you can't stand up and pray, sit down on the floor, put your feet towards the qibla and pray like that. If you can't do that and you find it difficult, then the option should be you resort to a chair. What we see, brothers and sisters, those who are watching this program, and we see this in our masajid, very unfortunate, and it's important we bring this issue to the surface so we get a better understanding of how this new phenomenon of sitting on a chair and praying has become so widespread that we see young people who come into the masjid, and not everyone is ma'dhur, but yet we are okay to go and run and catch the bus, do our shopping and all of those things. But when we come to the masjid, we pull out a chair and pray on that. Your prayer is absolutely invalid if that is the case. If you have the qudra, ability to pray standing or sitting on the floor, and you choose a chair, your prayer will not be valid. Please avoid using the chair, especially if you are not ma'dhur. Wallahu a'lam.
Thank you. And just to clarify, so when the sisters ask, when you're sitting on the chair, so how do you do the ruku? So you go halfway and then sujood, you just go as much as you can. Is that correct?
But before we sit on the chair, we have to try and sit on the floor, as we mentioned. These are the guidelines given to us by Rasulullah. If I'm not able to sit on the ard, the floor itself, then last resort is I can use a chair. ليس على المرض حرج. There is no compulsion upon the one who is ill. So a person who cannot do full ruku, the scholars they say you do that movement to the best of your ability. It doesn't have to be exactly the ruku.
Jazakallah khair. Hope that answers the question. With this, inshallah, it's time for a short break and we'll be back after a few moments. Wassalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the last segment of Ask Eman, the late night show where no subject is off the limit. In conversation with our tonight's guest, Fadilat Shaykh and Ustad Khidir Hussain. If you would like to ask us any question, either by calling us directly or dropping us a text via WhatsApp or even by email or messaging us through our social media platform, then all the necessary details are at the bottom of your TV screen. Inshallah, do feel free to use any of those methods. Inshallah, we'll be happy to answer any of your question. Now, Sheikh, we move on. We've got a lot of questions to answer. The next question: if my mother or father talks with me about my other siblings and what they have done wrong or what they have done good or what they should have done better, is it regarded as backbiting?
If the intention of the mother and father is islah, to rectify the relationship or to rectify the individual themselves, so one sibling might be a person who is not praying, might be a person who doesn't work, it might be a person who's not productive. So the mother and the father who is concerned shares that with you as a child, then it's absolutely fine if the intention is islah. But if it's the case where there is this sense of favoritism, that your parents love you more and they look down upon the other child, and you can see that there is a variance in terms of the love towards the children, then that is not accepted, and that shouldn't be the case from any parent. Favoritism is not allowed in Islam. When it comes to our children, we need to equally treat all of them, whether it's my first child or whether it's my final child. Often what happens is the youngest one is given the most love, and that is something that is done naturally. However, we need to ensure that favoritism is not there. So if the mother or the father, sometimes they share their pain regarding one sibling because they're giving them a difficult time, with the intention of islah, to solve an issue and to guide them, then inshallah that won't be considered as backbiting or ghiba.
Just to add a little bit there, favoritism you've mentioned, we also see some child who do better in education, the parents are more closer to that child, and not all, but we do notice sometimes within the society they're more closer to the person who is doing well in the academic perspective, from the academic perspective, than the other child or the sibling that is not too good in academic education. Now, what would your message be?
I think that's not a good approach, especially as children are growing up. The way their parents behave with them, it actually has a huge impact in their life later on. As children, we remember all of those incidents that took place in our early life, and we don't forget them. As a grown adult, someone who's now moved on and I've got my own family, I will remember all of those things. So these are not good memories to leave behind for your children. Yes, naturally what happens is my son or my daughter who's achieved, and let's use this period as an example, my son or my daughter who's achieved good results in exam, while another one who hasn't, what happens naturally is that I praise them more, I acknowledge the one who's achieved more, and the one who hasn't done well seems to be outside of the conversation,
or even putting them down in front of the others.
So that's not a good approach. Like I said, failure is not always the end of achievement. Rather, it could be the beginning. So we as parents, we have a responsibility to guide the one who's achieving and guide also the one who's not achieving. And this is the role as a parent.
And perhaps explore what other alternative methods can be used to succeed. Jazakallah khair. Now, the next question I want to find out, if someone is struggling with drug addiction, is it okay if they take small doses rather than stopping straight away because it's haram?
Firstly, we need to establish the drug itself that the individual is taking. Is it prescribed drugs? If it's prescribed drugs that are taken for the purpose of medication or treatment that has been prescribed by the doctor, then that is a different issue. But if it's illegal drugs, then absolutely not. ما حرم قليله حرم كثيره أما حرم كثيره حرم قليله. The scholars say that which is prohibited a huge amount is prohibited a small amount. That which is prohibited a small amount, it is prohibited a huge amount. So as a believer, I have to ensure that that which is prohibited, intoxicant, I have to come out of that. Kullu muskirin haramun. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says every intoxicant is absolutely prohibited. My commitment to Allah is that I don't give preference to what I love over what Allah loves. If I'm a strong believer, and we need to make an effort, and then if that is the case, I need to ensure I bring a halt, a stop to that. It's easy to say, but for someone who's addicted, that is a difficult journey. But you make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you the tawfiq to come away from that. In this show, we don't want to sit here and say that it is permissible for you to take illegal drugs. Absolutely not. What we want to say to you is that you go and seek help, because there is tons of help out there, that you go to a place where they can provide rehabilitation, they can provide treatment to come out of drugs. Go to an imam, go to an Islamic scholar, at the same time go and get treatment from your local doctor, from your local hospital. Combine those together inshallah, and you will come out of it, and make lots of dua that Allah gives you the tawfiq inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. And as Shaykh mentioned, I just would like to add, if you go to the NHS website, there are a lot of alternative options available. Please do get in touch and even speak to your GP if you haven't spoken to them yet, and they will refer you to the right direction. And inshallah, please do seek the necessary advice and guidance from the professional sources. Hope that helps. Now, before I move on to the next question, I just wanted to take a little bit of lesson from this questioner. Especially our children who have done their primary school, going to secondary school, or from secondary going to university, and we do know the options and access they will have it's more wider. Perhaps parents might not even think of what they are up to. Now, how important it is for parents to keep a track record of it. Some parents may say, oh, my child has grown now. Inshallah, they will be sincere. Inshallah, they will know what right and wrong is. However, they forget they're still in the early stage of growing up. What would your message be towards those children?
I think we're living in a society where it's filled with opportunities in relation to education, in relation to employment, in relation to business. So there is that prosperity in this society. At the same time, there are huge challenges that our children will be facing in this society. When it comes to the rise of knife crime, when it comes to the rise of gang-related crime, gun crime, when it comes to drugs, illicit relationships, all of those vice we see in society, the moment you step outside of your house, as much as you have those beautiful opportunities, there are those challenges. So me as a father or a mother, I have to take it upon myself to ensure that I am conscious, aware and alert of the well-being and welfare of my child. And that will begin from home. I have to ensure that I have a regular meeting with my family members, including my wife, including my children. As a mother, I sit down with my husband, I sit down with my father, I sit down with my children as a family together, and we have regular conversation. A father who sits with his daughter and he is showing concern about her welfare and well-being, that is a father who is on the right track. But if a father says, well, my daughter's now mature, she's 18 and now she's independent, then you will very soon be facing the consequences.
From the Islamic perspective.
Absolutely. You have to still nurture and guide and support and protect your children, even though they have exceeded the age of freedom. 18 that we see in this society, we feel that, oh, they're 18, we just let them loose and they do whatever they want.
And also the other bit I would like to add, especially people, students who will be studying in different university, for example,
Absolutely.
I'm talking about from London, who will be studying in Manchester, Newcastle, Nottingham, other places, or from other places who will be moving to London. So most likely they might be living in a hostel or renting out. Then parents might not have a full track record.
It's a new world for them. New world comes with new opportunities and new challenges. So now that your son or daughter has gone over to a university 200 miles away from you, you don't have absolute control over them. You don't know what they're doing. So it's important that we speak with them, sit with them regularly. We show especially that we are concerned about their welfare and
make them our friends, so that they can feel free to share everything.
And I think that is a beautiful point you raised. It's time we befriend our children and not just see them as my son and daughter, but rather someone who is not only the apple of my eyes, but more as a friend to me. And if we can build that relationship, we will bring our children away from those vices we mentioned.
Great. Next question. Can I pray Fajr when I wake up because I use medicine before I sleep and it makes me sleep a lot, or am I sinful?
Firstly, I want to say that seek alternative medication. If the doctor says that this is the only medication that you can take, then that's a different issue. But firstly, we have to ensure we're looking for an alternative. If I can take the medication during another time as opposed to that time, maybe that is the better thing to do. But no, a person should not miss Fajr. Fajr is the most important salah. That is the prayer that gives me the energy before I begin this very important day. So I shouldn't miss this prayer. But if a person is, they don't have any other alternative, then
but that needs to be sought, and all the avenues needs to be exhausted. And also the Quran says, وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. What does that mean?
And the person who is committed to Allah, who gives preference to what Allah wants, Allah will find a way out for that person. A person who is God conscious, the word taqwa means the person who is careful of their obligation towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They give preference to what Allah wants. Allah will find a solution for you bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So a practical piece of advice was that try and move that medication to a different part of the day that is not having an effect on you during the night, and you're missing Fajr, because you shouldn't be missing Fajr whatsoever. However, Allah says in the Quran, وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. Allah does not want the deen for you to become so difficult, is causing a harm to you physically, that if you must take that medication because of a serious illness, there is no alternative. That could be a possibility that perhaps it's okay for you temporarily. However, please do go and speak to someone who is knowledgeable, an imam locally, to seek further assistance and advice, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. With this, our time is up and we have come to the end of the program, inshallah. Hopefully, you found this program informative and interactive. Inshallah, till we meet again. Subhanakallahumma wa hamdik nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.